Welcome back to App Stories. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Federico, how you doing?
Hello, John. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. We've got a show today, Federico, that's sponsored by Trade Coffee, SourceGraph, and Memberful. And we're going to talk all about something near and dear to my heart, the recently added folder of the app library. It's actually not near and dear to my heart, but I thought it would be a fun way to kind of go through some of the apps that we have on our iPhones or iPads, if you want to use your iPad, and talk about them a little bit, because I went through mine. Actually, I will, full disclosure, my screenshots that I'm going to share today are from a few weeks ago when we originally were going to do this episode and then got sidetracked by the public betas. And I stuck with this particular set of apps, though, because I think they tell a more interesting story than what my recently added looks like today.
Yeah, I gotta say, your screenshot is a lot more interesting than mine. I'm actually gonna send you mine now so we can compare apps. Mine is the byproduct of changing a few things in my life lately. But there's a couple of new apps that I've been playing around with. So just sent you my screenshot, and I guess we can talk about this. Yours is very busy, so you've been downloading a lot of apps, which shouldn't surprise me, I guess.
Well, it's interesting because that was very true for my iPhone a few weeks ago. This is from, I guess, almost a month ago at this point, but that was very true of my iPhone, but not so much on my iPads. My iPad Mini and iPad Pro really didn't have much to speak of that was very interesting. And my iPhone now is down to less than a full screen worth of apps. It turns over pretty rapidly, actually. So a lot of the apps that we're going to talk about are gone, but they do kind of tell a bit of a story. So how do you want to do this? You want me to start?
Yes, I want you. Or I can ask you questions because
why don't you ask me questions? You kind of you've got my notes. I haven't had a chance to even look at yours yet, so I'm going to open yours up now.
All right. So what I want to know, first of all, we talked about Qbox, the Read Later app that we said has a lot of interesting features, but I would love to see a proper international localization of the app, because so many parts of this really interesting Read Later app are in Chinese only. And there's even an API, but the documentation is only in Chinese. And sure, you can use Google Translate or Apple's Translate app to translate it, but it would be better to have a proper localization of the app, including the actual app itself on the iPhone, iPad, and the Mac. So Qbox, did you play around with it? Because I saw that a major version 7 came out. We featured it in Mac Stories Weekly, and the developer are promising an English localized UI in the next quarter, I believe they said. So what do you think of Qbox, John?
I'm really intrigued by it. I will admit, I have not played with it a lot, but I had downloaded this before version 7 came out, after you and I spoke about it briefly on the show. And then when I saw 7 was released with an enhanced tagging system that includes, I think, nested tags, and that an internationalized version was coming down the road, I was really even more intrigued and have been playing with it ever since. I think that app and Raindrop.io are the two kind of organization of things you find on the internet type apps that have always intrigued me, but but neither one of them has ever really stuck with me. And I guess I would throw a third app that's a little different into this mix too, which is Keep It, because Keep It 2.0 came out maybe about 6 weeks ago or so, with a lot of great features that integrate with the file system, both the Finder on the Mac and files on iOS and iPadOS. And so I've been torn 3 different directions, really. I've been playing around with Raindrop again, mostly for things like, just really for navigating the web and bookmarking the web. Qbox is somewhere in between, where I've been doing some of that as well as saving other things in there. And then I've been really playing with Keep It a lot again, too. I haven't gotten deep enough into any of these to decide yet which ones may stick and not stick, because I've been a little busy lately. But Qbox, I think, has a lot of potential, and I wanted to really get a head start on it right now since I'm kind of anticipating that internationalized version coming up sometime in the next couple of months.
Yeah, and in the pre-show, we talked for App Stories Plus members. We talked about some changes coming to shortcuts and reading list.
Yeah.
So make sure if you don't subscribe to App Stories Plus, now would be an excellent time to do so, because I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of thoughts about those shortcuts features coming out soon.
It's time to experiment. These are the kind of apps that never really stand still, and I'm really excited to try them again and see if I can come up with a better system for the way I store links and files and images and all sorts of stuff.
And you can see one of those apps in my recently added section. I have Up Next in there. Have you played with Up Next at all?
I have, but not for a really long time when it was in a very early beta.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a whole, there is a trend I've noticed recently where some apps are really going out very quietly in kind of a stealth mode.
Yes, I've noticed that too. Yes.
Right, very, very early. And one of the I'm not sure it's a great idea all the time, because I will try them and bounce off them very quickly and then just leave them alone for months and months. But Up Next is one of those, and I don't really recall why I didn't stick with it at all. But it is an interesting app. What have you been playing with it lately?
Yeah, I've been playing around with it lately, and I think it's interesting because it changed a lot from the beta that I also tried last year. It now feels like a more mature product. But what I find interesting is like these folks, they're not the classic VC-backed startup that are charging nothing for you to use the app. They're charging quite a bit, actually. I believe the subscription price is $45, $49 a year. Like they don't have they have an interestingly priced subscription, especially when you consider how some of their competitors, like the Matter, for example, which we covered a bunch of times on Mac Stories, it's totally free to use, and you have competition from. Let me check. Actually, oh yeah, it's actually $9.99 a month, or $69.99 a year. So
That's
it's
kind of a lot. That's on the high end.
$10 a month for a Read Later app. But what is interesting here is that they're positioning themselves as a utility to save everything for later. So the idea is, sure, you can save articles, but you can also save Twitter threads, you can save YouTube videos, and you can even save podcast episodes. And then you can play those contextually. So you can listen to a podcast episode in Up Next, or you can watch a YouTube video in line. And I'm intrigued by this. I haven't really spent a ton of time digging in, but for example, they have all those advanced features that you would expect from a product of this kind with that kind of pricing. So they have full text search, they have highlights, which you can export as Markdown. They have some social features, which I don't really care about, but you can connect your Twitter account and you can find stuff recommended from Twitter if you want to do so. They have a web app, they have an iPad client, and they have a really interesting way that they sort of organize the homepage of the app. So you have some filters at the very top of the screen, which include features like long reads for longer articles and short reads for stuff that takes you just a few minutes to get through. But they also have these filters for other media types, as I mentioned. So there's a button just to see videos that you've saved. And if you open a video, you see an inline YouTube player, and you can start playing a video right there. There's a link to view your PDFs. So this is another feature that Up Next is doing now, and that, something like Readwise with Readwise Reader, they promised last year, this is going to be, the folks at Readwise said, we're going to do the Reader app, and we're going to let you save articles and RSS content and Twitter threads and PDF documents. And Up Next are already doing PDF documents, and you can read those in Up Next.
Right. A lot of what you're describing with Up Next is very similar to what was in that original post by
Very
Readwise. Yeah.
similar, very similar. And so, what I haven't really spent a ton of time doing is creating custom lists. But you can do that in Up Next as well. And I haven't really connected my social accounts to see what people are recommending. But the text parser is really nicely done, and it's pretty reliable. It does a pretty good job at parsing most websites. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm intrigued by this. It's yet another modern read later app, but the idea of them having already a business model and integration with all these services is fascinating to me.
Yeah, it does sound really good, and I'll tell you, I wrote about this recently for Club Mac Stories. I'm still on this kind of RSS journey, and I think one of the things I learned about myself with RSS is that I really don't, for the most part, like reading in RSS. That I really feel like I need somewhere. If there's something that unless it's short and I'm going to read it relatively quickly in Reader, I'm going to send it somewhere else. A lot of times that's Matter, but an app like this has potential for being a better way to collect everything and read it all at once. So, or listen to it or even watch it. So that sounds pretty great. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Trade Coffee. Trade is an amazing subscription coffee service that delivers great coffee right to your door. When I signed up, I just answered a few questions with their easy quiz to give them an idea of the kind of coffee that I like. And before I knew it, I had coffee delivered right to my door. The first bag that I got from them was from Joe Coffee in New York City, and it's a blend called Amsterdam, and it exactly fit the profile that I gave Trade. It's a nice medium blend with a smooth, rich taste. Trade really takes the research out of finding the perfect coffee because they have a team of experts that do all that hard work for you, using those handful of questions that you answered to pair you with the perfect cup of coffee. When you become a Trade Coffee customer, you'll get the freshest and best tasting coffee you've ever made at home. And the coffee you'll be drinking will be from the country's best independent craft roasters, which helps those small business out a lot too. And this is really cool. Trade's coffee team actually taste tests thousands of coffees to keep 450 different kinds live and ready to ship to you every single day. Everybody has that one coffee that they just love, and Trade will help you find it. Trade is confident that they'll match you with the right coffee the very first time, and if they don't, just give them your feedback, and an actual coffee expert will work with you to send you a brand new bag for free, so you know you'll be looked after. Trade Coffee sends you freshly roasted beans from 60 of the country's best craft roasters, small businesses who pay farmers fair prices to sustainably source the greatest beans from around the world. It just takes answering a couple of questions to get your own personalized variety of coffees delivered fresh to your door as often as you like. Right now, Trade is offering new subscribers a total of $30 off your first order, plus free shipping, when you go to drinktrade.com/appstories. That's more than 40 cups of coffee for free. Get started by taking their quiz at drinktrade.com/appstories and let Trade find you a coffee you'll love. That URL one more time is drinktrade.com/appstories for $30 off. Our thanks to Trade for their support of the show.
So back to your app library, okay? So now what I want to know is there's a few apps in here that I have no idea what they do.
Okay.
Ephemera. What is Ephemera?
Well, Ephemera is an app that you linked in Mac Stories Weekly, Federico.
I did.
Yeah, it's
the one for bookmarks that disappear.
Yes, it was. Yeah. It was quite a while ago. It's been at least a month. But yeah, it's meant to be a way to read things and not feel the pressure of having a long queue of read later stuff, because I think most people have better intentions about how much they can get around to reading later than they actually read, me included, and I end up with a long list. And Ephemera that deals with that by just getting, expiring the stuff and getting rid of it after a while so that it just doesn't stick around and your list doesn't get long. I don't think that app ultimately is for me, but I was intrigued by the notion of it, and so I downloaded it and was playing around with it. And if you find that having that long list stressful, that is one way to deal with it. Just have it expire and go away. Because, I mean, there are long form things that are very evergreen and you might not want that to happen with. But an awful lot of things, especially if you're using a read later app to read things that are like current events and news and that sort of thing, that really just have a relatively short shelf life. And if they've been on there for a while, might as well just have an app take care of them for you instead of having to go through and clear it out yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I should check it out again, though. Have you used the music app on iOS 16 yet?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think of the new scrubber for changing the progress in a song or the volume?
It's
curious.
fine. It doesn't bother. It doesn't bother.
It doesn't bother you?
No.
I
What about it bothers you?
I find it kind of confusing because there's no longer a dot in either progress bar. So there's no longer
I
an
guess that's
indicator.
true.
So the whole thing is swipeable now. But because
Right.
because there's no longer an affordance in terms of what you can grab, I feel like I'm always second guessing myself when I'm placing my thumb on the slider. And I know it's kind of weird. And Apple has been making some adjustments to this interaction. So for example, in beta 4, as soon as you put down your thumb, the progress bar or the volume bar, they grow a little bit thicker. And it's a very nice transition. When you put down your finger, they sort of, it's like they're getting highlighted. But I'm still missing the dot. I don't know, it kind of felt like I had a spot where I knew I could place my finger.
Volume was already kind of like that when it shows up on the side of your screen. So it's I think from a design standpoint, it's similar to that. Yeah, that doesn't actually bother me that much, but I can see why that might bug you. I guess I don't scrub through songs very often, and when I do control the volume, I tend to use Control Center because I just feel like I can get the precise volume I want better with Control Center if I maximize the volume slider. That tends to be where I go.
Makes sense. What is Point P?
Where is this one?
Point P.
Point P. Oh, this is
Point
this
P.
is a Netflix game.
Point P.
Yeah, it is. I have not played it yet. I downloaded this because I saw somewhere, probably Touch Arcade, that it was a particularly good one. And one of the things that, I think more interesting than the game itself is the fact that Netflix is now a legit indie game publisher on iOS. There are some really significant games coming out from Netflix that really, you would think Apple would want on Apple Arcade. It's not just like typical mobile game experience from Netflix. They actually have some high quality games, and this is supposedly one of them. So that's one of the ones I'm going to play.
Is Slice also a game?
No, Slice is not a game. Oh, I would also mention Into the Breach is out on is a Netflix game too, right? And that's a game that's been out for a while on other platforms.
I saw that, and it's like the legit version of Into the Breach.
Supposedly, I haven't that's one that has not appeared on my iPhone yet. I haven't downloaded it, but I've got it marked as something I want to check out because I think it's the full regular version that's been available elsewhere. But that's not a game I've played anywhere, so I might give it a shot on iOS. So, and again, that's Netflix. Slice goes back to WWDC because I was staying with my son and I was working hard while we were there, and I ordered a pizza, and Slice is a specialty pizza delivery app that finds pizza parlors in your area and lets you order from them. It's very much like DoorDash, but it's pizza specific for whatever reason, and it happened to be a good way to get a pizza delivered to his apartment in his area in Mountain View. I have not used it in North Carolina yet because I did actually open it the other day when I was getting ready for this show to see if it was still worth keeping on my phone. And unfortunately, the couple of pizza places I do know around here are not members of whatever the Slice network is. So they're not. I'll probably just be ordering the old-fashioned way over the phone or through DoorDash or something.
Given all these apps you have, I'm just gonna continue my quiz over here.
Okay, all right.
Cube Smart. Is this an augmented reality app?
No, this is a storage facility where I have a bunch of my stuff stored.
Oh my God.
So I have a whole bunch of these apps. There's a whole section of these recently added apps that are related to my move to North Carolina because we moved from a house to an apartment and we don't have as much space right now. We're probably going to buy a place down the road and we needed to store some things that we didn't want to get rid of. And so CubeSmart is my way to pay for my storage and to access the property where the it's like a garage essentially where I can go in, get through the front gate, unlock my storage unit, and go in there and grab stuff. Fortunately, we did a good job planning. I haven't had to go over to CubeSmart very often, but they're like a franchise. They're all over the United States.
I see. And I also see that you have the LG ThinQ app installed. So I'm guessing you got some new appliances, or is it for the TV?
That was for the TV
It's
that
for
we
the
talked
TV,
about on
okay.
Mac Stories Unwind, which is the LG C2 55-inch 4K OLED. And, not a great app, but when I was setting it up, that was how you did certain things to get it all set up. And it was easier to type things in on my phone with my thumbs than it was to use the remote, which works a little bit like a Wiimote where you have to, you can kind of use a directional pad too, but it also has this weird Wiimote style feature where you can point it at the screen and move the cursor around and click on letters that way, which is really slow and cumbersome.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any questions about my recently added folder?
Let me move to yours. Let me see what we've got here. So,
do you see the two birds flying in opposite directions?
I do, and I think I know why.
I didn't do it on purpose.
No, I know that's very well done. I think I know what these are. One is Arlo Secure, and the other one is Aviary.
Yeah.
And Arlo Secure, I assume you've bought yourself some new video cameras.
Yeah, it's part of the new alarm system that we have. It includes an Arlo camera, and that's the app that you use to watch the live video feed. I'm still not sure if I can add it to HomeKit.
Oh,
yet.
I think you can. I think Arlo works with HomeKit.
I think it does, but I haven't really looked into the settings yet.
Yeah, that would be easier to use. Most of these dedicated apps for HomeKit stuff or just home stuff in general aren't that great.
I hope that it's not like the Logitech cameras that once you, because I have the old Circle 2 cameras, that once you added them to HomeKit as HomeKit secure video cameras, the dedicated app by Logi stopped working.
I wonder if that's still true. That was such a weird thing.
It's my 3 old Logi cameras are still like that. Like they're still kind of stuck in the HomeKit world, and I don't want to touch them because they work, and I feel like it's the kind of thing where if you try to reset them, it's just gonna cause you troubles.
Yeah, I don't know. If you are ever looking for more cameras, I would look at the Eve ones too. Those are quite good. Especially, they just introduced an outdoor camera, but I've used their indoor camera that I wrote about on the site, and they're quite good, and they're pretty reasonably priced compared to Logi stuff.
Nice.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by SourceGraph. So you've hired a brilliant developer. That's terrific, but now you've got to get them onboarded. And if your company is growing, onboarding new developers is going to be a common occurrence, and one that's going to take a lot of time and be a big undertaking every time. One of the biggest challenges for new hires is to get up to speed on the projects that their new team is working on. This can be tricky if code bases your developers are working on are already large. Thankfully, SourceGraph makes it easy to move fast, even in those big code bases. Developers know that knowledge is most useful when it's findable. Centralization helps with that, but given the fact that most companies store their data in more than one place, how do you make knowledge accessible to those who need it the most? As a code intelligence platform, SourceGraph gives developers what they need to drive their own learning over time and in different situations. Teams that don't use SourceGraph have to rely on asking colleagues questions and reviewing out-of-date documentation, which is cumbersome and time-consuming. But with SourceGraph, every developer can search across millions of repositories to find specific code, saving time for themselves and everyone else. So when questions do come up, you know it's the big stuff that's worthy of the extra time. SourceGraph was created to make developers' lives easier, and today they work with leading companies across every industry, including 3 out of 5 of the top tech companies, plus PayPal, Uber, Plaid, GE, Reddit, and Atlassian. Visit about.sourcegraph.com to learn more. That's about.sourcegraph.com to find out why some of the biggest tech companies in the world use SourceGraph and to see what it can do for yours. Or just click on the link in the show notes to let them know you heard about them from us. Our thanks to SourceGraph for their support of the show.
I do want to talk about Widgetsmith because Widgetsmith, I feel like I didn't really get into the whole Widgetsmith hype with the home screen stuff a couple of years ago.
Yeah, me either.
But I feel like I'm really gonna be using this a ton in iOS 16 because of the lock screen. And just because I feel like Widgetsmith was built for these glanceable widgets. And I really feel like glanceable widgets make much more sense on the lock screen than they do on the home screen. And I already have a couple of Widgetsmith widgets on my home screen, on my lock screen.
Using?
I'm using the mini calendar. So I have a mini monthly calendar on the lock screen and a little reminders badge, like a little reminders thing. But I actually want to have more. And this is why I want to spend time thinking about multiple lock screens, because I feel like now that I have Widgetsmith with these integrations with a calendar and reminders, I can potentially do something interesting in terms of, the lock screen for when I'm quote unquote working and getting things done, and the lock screen for when I'm, just spending time with Sylvia or just hanging out with friends.
Yeah, and I think location-based lock screens are going to be big too, because I feel like a lot of times there are certain widgets that I'll always want on my lock screen when I'm at home, but if I'm out and about somewhere, I definitely am going to want something else. Like I can see having contacts, for instance, on my lock screen when I'm away from the house in case I have to call someone quickly. That kind of thing where it's just like a quick poke at it from on the lock screen. The other thing is, I think one of the things that's going to be interesting is thinking about how do you divide up these widgets between the very limited space on your lock screen, the very limited space on your watch, and the more expansive space of having home screen widgets that can be on multiple pages. So, the real estate's really at a premium on the lock screen and the watch. So I think between those two devices, I kind of think of them almost as one, where with complications and lock screen widgets, you can come up with a setup that gets you your stuff that you need the most from a glanceable standpoint, and then move everything else onto the home screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I need to think about it. I haven't really spent a ton of time playing around with multiple lock screens and focus modes and focus filters in 16. That's part of sort of the catching up that I have to do, with iOS and iPadOS 16 now.
I want to ask you about a couple of these other ones because there's some I don't recognize here. What's Enjoy?
Enjoy. It's an Italian sort of a ride-sharing application. Well, not ride-sharing. Right. You rent a car and you use it, and then you drop it off, and you're done. It's like what do you have in America that's similar? You don't have right to go. Basically, like you can rent like a Fiat 500. You can see all the Fiats that you have on a map. And you walk there and the car unlocks and you drive it within a designated area. And then when you're done, you just click I'm done and you park the car and you pay.
Stuff too.
Yeah.
We've got that same kind of stuff. And I'm assuming that my Verisure is related to your security system too, right?
Yes,
because it has like a badge on it, makes it look very much like the police are going to get me if I try to break into Federico's place.
That's exactly what's going to happen. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stay away until I'm invited. And then let me ask you about the one. Well, I guess let's see. Is Lock Launcher?
Lock Launcher.
I was going to say that maybe that's a lock on your front door, but I think it's probably not since it's a beta.
It's a beta, and this is an interesting one that I found via one of our Club Mac Stories Discord members. So this is the kind of stuff that happens on the Club Mac Stories Discord. By the way, people talking about betas and sharing links to test flights. It's one of the many reasons why the apps channel is one of the most active and interesting ones
it's
on our
fantastic.
Discord. Like
yeah.
if you are
I find new stuff all the time.
exactly, like if you like this show, like if you like app stories and if you're into apps and trying new apps, I honestly like, not just because I'm like selling my own thing, but genuinely the apps channel in our Discord is excellent. I myself discover a ton of things in there.
Tell me about this one, but then I want to tell you about one that I discovered in the Discord too.
Okay, Lock Launcher is an iOS 16 lock screen widget utility that lets you launch URL schemes from the lock screen.
I saw that post.
So
I hadn't downloaded that
you
yet.
can run a specific shortcut in the Shortcuts app directly by tapping a button on the lock screen. Yeah.
What have you connected to it so far? Anything interesting?
Nothing. I just like the idea of having the possibility.
Okay. No, you're like me. You're like, oh, this is. I have ideas for this, and then you download it, and then it's another month before you get to it.
Yeah, and the ideas will come to me at some point.
No, they will. They will. I look. I'm the exact same way. I'm not criticizing. All right. One that I found recently. This is really funny because the other day I was going out for a walk, and like I said before, I don't know this area really well. And I didn't want to go on some overly long walk. I wanted to get a sense for how far it was going to be. And I thought, I've had all these various running and walking apps over the time, but I thought what I really need is an app that lets me trace out a path and tells me how far it is. And I went looking for this. And I found an app called Footpath, which has been around for a long time, and I've never heard of it. I was surprised. And it lets you on a map trace a route just like I wanted, and then it snaps what you've drawn to the roads and paths in your area and tells you how far you've gone. And it can even, with their like subscription, give you turn-by-turn directions. Perfect for whether you're like walking, running, cycling, whatever it happens to be. And as soon as I did that, I went into the app channel on our Discord, and someone had just mentioned the exact same app. So I actually found this on my own, but someone had just been talking about how great an app this is. And I looked around and I didn't really find anything else exactly like it. And I really love it. It's a great way to just, part of the thing is where I'm living now, there's not a lot of different ways back to where I started. So it's not like a grid of streets necessarily. So you have to kind of, if you get too far out in one area, it may take you a while to get back. So it's nice to just trace my finger around and see exactly where I'm going to go, where my turns are going to be, and how far it's going to end up being.
Very nice. Very nice.
All right. Tell me about this NEA Smart 2.0. What's that? I don't even know what this picture is. It looks like steam rising out of a snowflake.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. That's the app that controls the new temperature system that we have. So
I was right.
Yeah.
It's a good icon, I guess.
It's a steam and a snowflake. But you have some old familiar faces in your folder as well. For example, Tweetbot.
Yeah, Tweetbot. I was just that's just
you were
me
just
checking
playing
out
around with it. Okay.
That's
okay.
me. Yeah, that's me checking out latest features and whatever beta had come out. Because usually what I'll do is I periodically will go through Test Flight and see what features are listed in the release notes and download things and check them out that way. Some of these I don't even know how they got in here. Like for instance, Duolingo is in this.
Well, I didn't put them there. It wasn't me, so you must
I know.
have
I
done
don't know. Well, I don't know how it got there because it's been on my phone, but I haven't even opened it in a while, so I don't know how it ended up in recently.
It's got a notification as well for you.
I know. They want to tell me so. They're probably telling me that I haven't used it in months.
They want to tell you that you're supposed to be learning Italian. So that's,
I know. I got to work on that.
Momentum. Momentum is the Safari extension for the custom start page.
Yes, and I downloaded that because I realized that I had it on my iPad Pro, but I wasn't using it anywhere else. And I thought, I had to check this out and see how it works on the iPhone. So I downloaded it. I do. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to, I subscribed to it for a year, and I'm not sure I'm going to keep it at the end of the day. It's nice. I like the photography more than anything else, having the how it changes every day. But I haven't really been using the widgets as much, so I'm not sure I'm going to stick with it long term. But I wanted to, before it expires, which will be this fall, because I picked it up when extensions came out last fall, I'm going to give it another try on all the platforms to see if it's something that I might want to fit into my life. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Memberful. Memberful is the easiest way to sell memberships to your audience, used by the biggest creators on the web. Memberful handles the hard stuff so you can focus on what you do best while earning revenue quickly. If you're looking to add membership to your existing business, you want a solution that works with your existing technology so you can launch a revenue stream without rebuilding your entire tech stack. Memberful seamlessly integrates with the tools you already use like WordPress, MailChimp, Discord, and lots more. Memberful maintains a full-featured GraphQL API, webhooks, and OAuth single sign-on to make it easy to integrate seamlessly with any stack. Memberful also maintains a best-in-class WordPress plugin to add memberships and content restriction to your website. You can use a custom domain name so everything is fully branded under your name, and it connects directly with Stripe for secure payments and handles all of your transactional email. Memberful has everything you need to run a membership program, including custom branding, gift subscriptions, Apple Pay, free and paid trials, private podcasts, in-house newsletters, referrals, and lots more. At MacStories, we've been using Memberful for years, and we love it. Get started today for free with no credit card required by going to memberful.com/appstories. Again, to get started for free without a credit card, go to memberful.com/appstories. Our thanks to Memberful for their support of the show.
Before we wrap up, I want to make sure that we cover two excellent utilities that I see in your app library, John.
Okay.
The first one is On the Way. I believe the full name is Weather on the Way.
Yes.
And the other is Watch Calendar. So tell our listeners about both.
All right. So Weather on the Way is a really unique take on a weather app, because what it lets you do is it lets you plot out a trip from point A to point B, and then it gives you the weather along the way. That's the whole idea. So it'll see, for instance, this, and the reason this is on my phone is because I drove from Illinois to North Carolina. And this time of year, there are often very big thunderstorms rolling through the mountains in the eastern United States. And I wanted to know whether I was going to get caught in any big storms. And so I plotted my trip from one state to the other. And it gave, it'll show you what your path is going to be and what the weather is going to be at various points along there, using not only, it's not telling you the current weather, it's telling you what the weather is anticipated to be when you arrive at that location, which is fantastic. And that way you can kind of check it and look and see, whether there are any storms coming and whether you're going to get stuck in them on your trip. So that's what I used it for, and that's why I have it. I highly recommend it for any kind of road trip type situation.
A really excellent app.
Yeah, and then Watch Calendar. Watch Calendar is very unique because it actually can cram a full month's calendar on your watch, and it uses a heat map system to give you a sense for how busy you're going to be, because obviously it can't have events written out for each of those little tiny squares for the month. But it has not just that, but it has a lot of different views that can be customized, that you can use on your watch to see, a week view or a day view, and see what your events are going to be. But the reason it's on this recently added folder is that they recently added widgets, and the widgets do a lot of what you see with the Watch app too, where the widgets have customizable themes and views into your various calendars, very customizable in terms of which calendars are shown, how many days are shown, and that sort of thing. And I thought it was a really nice addition to the app that I was checking out for Mac Stories Weekly, and added a couple of them to my iPhone to see how they worked, and they work great. Another thing, since I downloaded this, another thing that they've added is reminders are integrated with Watch Calendar now too, which is a big addition. So if you're someone who likes to see your your reminders alongside your events, you can do that with this app now too.
Yeah, and I really like Watch Calendar, and it's one of the that I downloaded a few days ago, and I want to set it up on my Apple Watch. So these are some really excellent choice in your app library, John. I mean, sure, there's the few. Oh, there's another one I want to ask you about.
Okay.
I also guess this is location based. Wanderlog.
Yes, this I think. Yes, this is another one from the Discord that someone mentioned because
Nice.
people were talking about travel apps, and I had never heard about this because I've used Tripsy from time to time for when I have an upcoming trip, but Wonderlog is another take on that lets you plan trips and log where you're going and where you've been and that sort of thing. And I haven't, since I downloaded, I haven't gone anywhere. I've mostly been at home, so I haven't used it a lot yet. But I do have a trip coming up later this summer, so I'm going to try to use it for that. All right, Federico. Well, that's a lot of apps for one day. That's a little slice of life of our iPhones and what we've been downloading recently. I want to thank our three sponsors again for this episode. That's Trade Coffee, SourceGraph, and Memberful. You can subscribe to App Stories Plus by going to appstories.plus. Those are extended ad-free versions of the show that are released a day early on Sundays and in high bitrate audio. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico's on Twitter and Instagram too as @Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.